Alright guys, so I'm going to be doing a quiz review with you today. It's also going to help you review for your test. That's fine. So if you could, we're going to work on whiteboards and just be ready to solve these problems. Some of this, it's been a little bit since we went over it, so we just want to make sure we're covering everything you need to know. All right, and it'll start with decimals. 9/20ths. I want you to convert that to a decimal. Convert 9/20ths to a decimal. All right, so I first need to look at my denominator. Does it go into 100 evenly or 10?
Yes.
Okay, so yes, it goes into 100 evenly. I can multiply top and bottom by what? 5. And I get 45 over 100, which is 0.45. And this work is very important because you have your calculators. The work shown here shows me that you knew how and why it converted. You say, well, I did it mental math. That's not quite good enough because we have the calculators. We need to have proof there, okay? So I need you to show that work. All right, let's look at the next one, 13 over 22. I need to convert this one to a decimal. Remember, just using your calculator, it might tell you the answer, but if all you write is the answer, you're not going to get credit on these problems. All right, there's something that you need to show here. Now, can I do the same thing I did for number 1? No. Why? It doesn't go into 100. So what do I have to do? Long division. All right, go ahead and do that. Long division. Okay, so 22 does not go into 13, so I put my 0 in my decimal. 130, 5 times. Okay, and then I subtract and I get 20. But does 22 go into 20? No, so now I have to bring down another 0. And when I do that, I need a 0 placeholder. Sorry, I just put a 9, yes. And then I get 198. And then I got my 2. Then I bring down to 0, but 22 does not go into 20, so I need a 0 here because it does not go into it. Then I bring down another 0, and it's going to be another 9. And here's where I start to see the repeating factors come into play. And I see the 0 is repeating. Now, it's important on a problem like this that you do have the 0 in your answer and that you show that it's repeating. Okay? Because if you said just the 9 repeating, that's actually not correct. It's 9 and 0 that are repeating. Okay? So the whole difference between these first two problems is if the denominator goes into 10 or 100 evenly, you can just multiply. If it doesn't, you must do long division. All right? Now we have a repeating decimal. And we must change the repeating decimal to a fraction. And I wish it was as easy as 6 over 10 and be done with it. But it's not. Okay? I have to go through, by the time we're done, almost this whole screen will be taken up by our equation. We start off with x equals 0.6 repeating. And then we have to multiply both sides by a number, by some number. Would it be 10, 100, or 1,000? Why is it 10? Because it's one digit that's repeating, not because it's the tens place, but because it's one digit that's repeating. Okay? So multiply both sides by 10, and I get 10x, but remember what happens when I multiply a decimal by 10. It actually moves to the right one place. So now that's why I get 6.6 repeating. And now I have to subtract. I have to subtract something. Does anybody remember, Josh? The original equation, x equals 0.6 repeating. I subtract the original equation, And now a really, really nice thing happens. When I subtract my repeating decimals from each other, it doesn't matter that it goes on to infinity because I'm subtracting the exact same value. So what happens? It cancels out. All right. Now what's 10x minus x? 9x equals 6. Divide both sides by 9, and you get 2/3. Okay? Now, 2/3, if you were to put it in your calculator, guess what it's going to be when you change it to a decimal? 0.6 repeating. Okay? Now, here's the bummer. Okay? You might be able to memorize 0.6 repeating always converts to 2/3. Always. So you might say, Miss Kinder, I just knew that. I knew that it was 2/3. I want to believe you, and I do believe you. However, for the sake of this quiz, you still have to show me setting up the equation. And here's why. There's going to be repeating decimals that you don't have memorized, and you have to know how to convert them. So I'm just as much grading you on your work as I am coming up with the right answer. All right, number 4. Is this number rational or irrational? Depending on what you choose, what kind or why. So the why is the category. If it's irrational, it's non-terminating and non-repeating. Well, in order to know that, I have to know the decimal value of the square root of 40. What is the decimal value of the square root of 40? All right, so go ahead and work on this. Is it rational or irrational? Well, show me the decimal value, then tell me rational or irrational and why. Yeah, irrational, because when I look at the decimal value, I mean, the numbers keep going without any pattern. So I say irrational, non-terminating, non-repeating. Okay? You do have to say that part. Now, every time a number is irrational, it's going to be the same reason. All right, what about this number? Okay, tell me rational or irrational, and then your why is your category. Okay, what do you think, guys? Rational. It is rational, and it is an integer. I've heard quite a few people say terminating decimal. Technically, there are no decimal values in this number, so technically that's not the best answer. It would be integer. Now, is that a whole number?
No.
No, why not? Because it's negative. Whole numbers are only positive. I can almost guarantee you're going to see something like that on your future college tests that you're going to be taking. They love talking about this, what we call number sense, with rational and irrational numbers. All right, what about this number? What about that number? All right, what do you think, Elizabeth? No. Nope, Sarah? Yes, rational repeating decimal. Very good. Repeating decimal. All right, now, what if I told you to approximate the square root of 70 to the nearest whole number and the nearest tenth? The work that I'm going to be looking for you to show is the square roots high and low, or the perfect squares, sorry. The perfect squares high and low that surround 70. So 70 is not a perfect square, but there is a perfect square that's below it and above it. And then I need to pick the closest one. All right, so perfect squares, guys. Let's say them together. Let's just start at the bottom. 1, 4, 9, 16, 25, 36, 49, 64, 81, 100, 121, 144, 169, 196, 225. So when I'm going through those are the 15 perfect squares that I memorized. I want to know which ones are closest to the given number that I'm approximating. And it's 64 and 81. Now, which one is it closest to? 64. Okay, so now because of that, I'm going to say 8. 8. Now, you can use your calculator for the 10th. Square root of 70, rounded to the nearest 10th, is 8.4. And these numbers should be rounding to each other, right? So 8.4 would stay an 8 if I were to round to the nearest whole number. All right, so that's a good half of your quiz and your test. All right, the first, I think it's 12 questions on your test are just these problems, which is almost exactly half. All right, now the last part of your test covers volume. All right, so let's review our volume formulas. If you don't know the volume formulas, it's really going to mess you up on your test. All right, V equals for a cylinder. V equals, can y'all say it with me? No, for a cylinder. V equals pi r squared h. Now for a cone, V equals 1/3 pi r squared h. Okay, so what is the only difference between a cylinder and a cone?
1/3.
Yes, you basically take the volume and divide by 3 for a cone. All right, now what about a sphere? V equals 4/3 pi r to the 3rd power. Okay, so this one kind of messed some people up yesterday because the others are squared and they squared it. But remember, it's to the 3rd power. Okay, so based on this information, I want you to find the volume. Don't say what kind of figure it is. You have to know what kind of figure is it and then what formula do you use. Okay, plug it in your formula. 3.14 times your radius squared times your height. Okay, now this is the part I really want to stress to you. I need to see some work, okay? Now I'm not saying a ton, but 2 squared times 5 means 4 times 5, and you understand that is 20, and then come up with your answer. This is how I know that you didn't just plug it in your calculator, okay? So I need to see at least one more step between the substitution and your answer. Elizabeth? Because it's volume. Volume, the unit is always cubed on volume. Okay. You are squaring the radius, but for the unit, because it's volume, length with height type thing, it's the amount that fills it, it's cubed. All right, that's a good question. All right, number 12. This one was not drawn as well. Sorry.
You drawn it before?
I drew it last hour. And they all made fun of me. Okay, so here, this is the information that you have. All right, and go ahead and solve for the unknown dimension. All right, yes, good. Okay, so V equals 1/3. Did y'all remember 1/3? Pi r squared h. Okay, so this is the part, guys, that I need you to show me some multiplication. Okay, so 3.14 times 25 is 78.5. All right, and then when I do 78.5 divided by 3, I get 26.16h. Now what do I do to solve? Yes, divide by 26.16 and round to the nearest whole number in this case. Now the instructions are going to very clearly tell you how to round, whether it's to the whole number or to the 10th. All right? Any questions? Okay, we should be good to go for our quiz on Monday.